So Richard Harrington here, can I ask a question?
Yeah, please fire away, Richard.
Yeah, well, I found it very interesting that the Dutchman's pipe is the saviour of the common birdwing in Singapore, but the nemesis of the Richmond birdwing in Queensland. I mean, is there anything that can be learnt there about the way in which the common birdwing deals with the toxins? I mean, maybe if it's a single gene, it might even be possible to consider getting that gene into the Richmond birdwing. I don't know, but the contrast seems fascinating.
Can I jump in there if I could, Mark? This is Ian from Australia. It's actually not the same species. It's got the same common name, which is unfortunate, but one is Aristolochia acuminata, the other one is Aristolochia elegans. So the Dutchman's pipe that's causing the problem for the Richmond birdwing in Australia is actually a South American native that's been introduced here. And it's we actually also have Aristolochia acuminata in the north, which is the food plant for the Cairns birdwing.
Thank you very much. That all goes to show the problem with vernacular names. Thanks very much for that.
Absolutely.
Perhaps I could add that something was mentioned early on in the presentations today, that the taxonomy of Aristolochia is poorly known, and we really do need some support from the botanical community here, because I think I'm correct that the genus has not been revised or reviewed for a very long time, and clearly there are some important issues here and possibly some significant benefits, not just to conservation, but in a wider sense as well. So I think on the strength of this conference, perhaps we in SBBT should do more to bring in the botanists. Is there another question from the floor? While we're waiting for one, perhaps I'd like to ask Matt Cecil from, or perhaps Ian, is Matt with us? Yes, Matt's here, good. Matt, did I have the impression that the National Parks Department is not terribly active, or did I get that wrong? And what is the difficulty in getting national parks more involved in supporting the reintroduction of the butterfly?
National parks in Queensland are, I guess, a little bit underfunded, which might go some way to answering that question. But I guess the role of national parks really is to preserve patches of bushland as they are, and not so much do a whole lot of restoration activities that would include planting Richmond birdwing butterfly vines. So we use the national parks as reserves as they are, and they'll have vines growing in them, and we'll leave them as be. And we'll work on council reserves and private land, I guess, is a little easier to get into. There's also some permitting processes in order to do anything on national parks. It's not just a straightforward matter of going in there to dig holes and plant trees. So there's a layer of difficulty associated with working in national parks. Ian might be able to help out a little bit further and expand on that as well.
Yes, Mark, there are some examples where we have done enrichment planting of birdwing butterfly vines in national parks, and Burleigh Head National Park on the Gold Coast is a good example. And there's also been targeted weeding efforts there to get rid of the introduced exotic Dutchman's pipe, or, sorry, I shouldn't use that word, Aristolochia elegans from that park. So there are examples where we do active habitat enrichment for Richmond birdwings. But on the whole, the program that Matt describes so ably is targeting private and local government land and places that are not part of the protected area estate in Queensland. But certainly the national parks and the staff that manage them are very keen on protecting the birdwings that occur there and doing what they can to promote the species remaining in those areas.
Thanks, Matt and Ian. Anuj, you had a question? And I see James.
I do. Thank you. I found the talk on the conservation of birdwings in Southeast Asia absolutely fascinating. And I just wanted to kind of open up possibilities of how we could think about cross-taxa conservation. And a bit of background is that I work with BirdLife, and I see Peggy in the audience as well. So we have several projects in Wallacea working with parrots, endemic parrots, Obi, Halmahera, Maluku, Seram, and all that, where a big focus is on tourism for parrots. And I'm just wondering if there could be ways in which birdwing tourism and parrot tourism could be thought about, in a cohesive way, and how that could bring better benefits for communities.
Anybody like to respond to that comment?
Yeah, if I may,
Roger.
I think it's an excellent idea. And I mean, we see in Europe that many of the nature tour operators will combine birds and butterflies either on the same excursion or indeed in separate specialist excursions. The issue, of course, is having the available expertise, not just to know the endangered swallowtails, which is relatively easy because there aren't that many of them, but knowing the whole fauna of that area, which is a different approach to conservation altogether. We've seen in most butterfly conservations a sort of borrowing of the vertebrate approach, which is you pick your species, you learn its biology, and then you try to modify its environment so that there are more of them, as opposed to a sort of community ecology approach, which is what national parks are all about. We need some careful thought, I think, how we combine these two sorts of activities.
Yes, indeed. And in fact, in SBBT, we have discussed a little bit about the need for training of guides in butterfly biology initially, and more specifically identification, because there are, of course, training schools for rangers and guides and these sort of people in protected areas. They've been going for many, many years, but the curricula do not include much information on insects or butterflies in particular. As yet, we haven't managed to pin down a project to try and take this matter forward, but it's certainly something we would like to look at more in the future. We have, by the way, let me just say, we haven't been able to get the chat function to work again. Sorry about that, but we have got, if you look under reactions, you can put a hand up and I will see you and call you for your question. On that basis, could I call James Milton now, please?
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for your talks today. Very, very interesting to learn more about these amazing species. I have a question for the professors from Australia. I was just curious. Obviously, you had the devastating wildfires last year and bushfires. Do you know if that has at all affected population levels? Because I know how many, obviously, which was devastating. Was it a billion animals were sadly killed in that wildfire? And so I'm curious whether you know if there's been any impact to population levels on of swallowtails and birdwings.
That's a good question, but it's a difficult one to answer. For the most part, the distribution of the birdwings that we're aware of in Queensland was not directly impacted by the fires, but there were places in northern New South Wales that there very likely was impact. I'm thinking about the Nightcap Range, which is in the very close to the New South Wales-Queensland border. But in that situation, there were fires that went right up into the rainforest areas where birdwings certainly breed. So there could well have been impacts in that area, but fairly localized on the scheme of the greater distribution of Richmond birdwing. So probably not a huge impact overall, I don't think.
Well, that's good news indeed. Thanks for that.
If I could just add, it's a more important question with respect to many of our other species of butterflies, which are associated with eucalypt forests primarily, and the jury is still out as for some of them as to what the impacts of the fires were.
And that would presumably include some swallowtails in the eucalypt forest, would it?
Absolutely, yes.
Charles, could I take your question now, please? Charles Dewhurst, if you could just introduce yourself briefly.
Hi, my name is Charles Dewhurst, and I've recently worked in Papua New Guinea. I'm retired now and living in Gloucestershire in the UK. And I've been very closely involved with the Queen Alexandra's Birdwing. I just wondered if I could ask Ian a quick question. Do you find that by hand mating, you get many fewer eggs laid, or is it fairly similar with the hand mating and the natural mating taking place?
Thanks for the question, Charles. We haven't noticed a difference yet, but perhaps that's because we shifted to hand mating quite early in the procedure, because we just didn't have the time to wait around for the males and females to mate naturally, and sometimes they weren't mating naturally. So we thought we'd just get on with it, and the hand mating seemed to work. And we've certainly had what seems like sufficient egg production for us to get the numbers of larvae that we're after. But perhaps it's something we should trial if you see that there's, or have seen in the past, that there's a difference between the two techniques and the egg productivity. Maybe it's something we should look at in closer, take a much closer look at to be sure we're not doing something untoward to our processes.
Thanks very much. Could I invite Roger Kendrick's question, please?
Evening, morning, afternoon, everybody. I'm a private independent wildlife consultant and founder of the Asian Lepidoptera Conservation Symposium. Good day to those of you who know me already, and hello from Hong Kong to everybody else. Thank you everyone for the talks so far. You mentioned a common theme at the start of the Q&A session, and one that struck me as a very probably the most fundamental common theme is that of community involvement. We heard from Fiji how understanding not just how the ecology of the butterfly works, but how the community works as a community to engage overseas and local people in the conservation effort can act perhaps as a model for others to follow elsewhere in Asia and across the world, because we mustn't forget that later we're coming on stream in the Americas. Anush, I bring in you specifically because you're in one of the most developed communities we have in Asia, in Singapore, likewise here in Hong Kong. We are a major consumer, which impacts greatly on everybody else around simply through the way we consume other people's products. How much of a link is recognized in the source communities? I'm asking particularly people like Peggy and those of you that have major biological resource industries. How much of a connection is seen on the ground between habitat destruction and utilization of resources in highly industrialized and highly developed cities, please?
Thank you, Roger. There's a couple of questions there. First of all, on the communities, I'd like to invite Richard, Markham and Stephen Sutton both to make quick comments on that, if you wouldn't mind. Richard first, perhaps?
Yes, I mean, absolutely. The in Fiji, community is everything, from decisions on land use right the way through to just it's pervasive, and as I said during the talk, I think it's a bit troubling that perhaps communities don't actually realize how strong they are, how much influence they have over these over the state of the natural resources and the habitats. And I think that's part of the challenge, is to kind of empower people to take ownership in a proactive way, to do something about this. That these things are not an act of God; they're largely acts of human folly and misuse of the environment, and therefore that people can and should do something about it. So I think it's sort of community mobilization as well as anything else.
Stephen, would you like to add anything?
there's two sides to this in around, let's say, Mount Kinabalu. One is that there's a national park, which is also a World Heritage Site. So that isn't so much to do with the local community, but the local community all had their little lawns, their little small holdings outside the national park, within basically walking distance, usually, of their houses in the villages. And they are involved in cash crops now, pineapples, coffee, and they will clear more forest from their ownership of forest and their communal forests in order to grow their crops. So we have a problem of the sustainability there, but ironically, we now have 12 homestay owners who are very much acting as ambassadors for us to try and persuade the rest of the village to use their forest more sustainably. There's another interesting thing in that quite a lot of the forest, not immediately close to the villages, is actually in quite small parcels of a few hectares. And that is owned by speculators, people from the city who made money quite often out of oil palm. And they spend very, very large sums of money buying up these, say, 5-hectare plots. Then they clear one plot, and then they think about using it to build a nature resort of some sort, or somewhere cool where mainland Chinese can come and cool off. Because remember, we're talking about quite high levels, well over 1,000 feet, 1,000 meters. And the problem there is that they then often find, well, so far almost always find, that they can't afford to build a resort. There isn't the visitor base, and I'm not just talking about COVID, I'm talking about pre-COVID, but I think also post-COVID. Briefly. The ironic thing is that the birdwing, the Kinabalu birdwing, actually really seems to appreciate a cleared area, if provided it's adjacent to good forest. I won't say closed forest necessarily, but pretty good forest. It can be somewhat disturbed.
Could we draw this to a conclusion? Well, I've got quite a number of people and only 4 minutes left. I do apologize.
Right, no. Well, anyway, or just to say that the cleared areas are where nectar plants, invasive ones, come in, and that helps the butterfly to produce more eggs because of more nectar.
And could I call on Anna? Would you like to say a word or two? Do the people of Singapore, it seemed from what you're saying, although they are major resource users, is it true that they are becoming much more aware of their own impact on their resource use, or not? Anuj.
I think so. Excellent question. And I think the awareness is growing significantly. We are seeing a huge amount of recognition for nature-based climate solutions, and therefore not just thinking locally, but also regionally. And then seeing things, how interconnected they are. So thank you.
Thanks. I'd like to take Peggy now. Peggy, you have something you wanted to say from Lipi in Indonesia.
Thank you. Thank you so much. First, I would also like to thank Dick Van Rijk, my lifelong mentor in butterflies, and also Mark Collins and Martin Partridge for basically listing the butterflies in priority that are need of our urgent attentions, and many of them are Indonesian. So that is a big homework for me and for us. I hope some of you will also like to join to help handling the trouble. Well, I'd like to also point out what Jane asked about the excursion across taxa between birds and butterflies. I think that is an excellent idea that we can probably try to do. And actually, like about 10 years ago, I did try with Nature Conservancy that we did excursion for the ecotourism, including for Maleo maleo birds and for butterflies, and that works actually fairly well. And yeah, but it took a lot of energy, so I think it can be worked out, but it's okay. It's nice to be think of. And as far as habitat destruction, I found it really troubling that the forest at the lowlands in Bacan and Halmahera, when I did survey 2 years ago, they were still actively being locked out even at the time. So I think in terms of Ornithoptera croesus, the range of the distribution will probably, we need to go further into the forest. Like at the time I walk through the rivers, like about 2.5 hours, and to the other side even like 3 hours walk to find to the site of the Musainda trees where the butterfly will come, and we can observe the butterflies flying from the pristine forest. So I think a captive breeding in situ captive breeding is also a solution for the Ornithoptera croesus, and I already found a few people interested in that, and they were actually dealers of insect dealers also. So if we put them in the right channel to do the butterfly trading legally, then probably we can find a good option to preserve the butterflies, the Wallace birdwing butterflies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peggy. It's lovely to see you joining our meeting. I've got two more. I'm going to run slightly over our 11 o'clock deadline, if you'll forgive me. I've got two more questions. It's a real pleasure to see Eric Garraway with his hand up from Jamaica. Goodness knows what time it is with you, but Eric, do you have something for us?
Good morning. I got up early at 3 o'clock and had a cup of coffee to get me going, but I didn't want to miss this at all. My question really relates to the use of actually individuals in individual butterflies in the study of the genomic work on the Queen Alexandra birdwing. And there's a philosophy among some persons where it says, don't touch. And I wonder if there's any pushback to the idea of actually sacrificing a couple of individuals for this study. And how did they manage this problem? Or anyone who have had that such a problem in the past. So it says, don't touch. How could you sacrifice individuals for such a study?
It's a very good question, Eric. Thank you. I'm not sure whether Henry Barlow is still with us, but I know that that particular piece of work that we did in SPDT had to go through all the official channels. Henry, are you still online?
Yes, I'm still online. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Well, all the necessary approvals were obtained, both in PNG and through CITES for this work. The fact of the matter is that if we're going to find out about these populations, occasionally it is necessary to use specimens for research. And this happened in this case.
And indeed, and I think Eric is referring to that there can be, as you mentioned, pushback, negative reaction to this sort of work, but we have to fight against that. Certainly, in some parts of the world, there are difficulties, not helped, of course, by the fact that there are illegal collectors. And if I may elaborate slightly on Eric's point, in Jamaica itself, the homeless swallowtail, which some of you will come to our evening session and hear Eric's talk. The homeless swallowtail has been the subject of a lot of illegal collecting and local people are very much against this and help to protect the butterfly from these sorts of people. But in so doing, of course, it can generate, you know, a reaction that is so negative that it can even prevent valid scientific work. So there is a bit of a conundrum there. I'd like to finish now with Clive Huggins. Clive, you had a point to make?
Yes, I'd like to just pick up on your point. In Fiji, with Operation Wallacea, we had used the local village people as guides. Obviously, they're quite knowledgeable on some of the local plants or trees which are used for medicinal purposes, and many of them are aware of the other wildlife apart from butterflies. The other thing is this: we've really gone in 3 years from zero to where the butterfly wasn't known at all to where we are today, and now the Nativa swallowtail is proposed as a flagship species for the Fiji National Conservation Organization. The other thing I'd like to say, the Nativa swallowtail on this special peninsula in the outer island of Fiji, if that area is protected, it will importantly protect many other wildlife and plants which are endemic just to that peninsula. So I'm sure with other areas of the world too, protecting the butterflies saves many other wildlife and plants. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Clive. So slightly over time, for which I do apologise, poor chairmanship on my part. Just to, in closing, perhaps draw attention to one or two very common themes throughout this this session that we've just all very much enjoyed. First of all, the business of communities, the need to involve communities. It does strike me that here, many of us in the room, so to speak, are in fact scientists. We're not sociologists. And maybe this isn't our strong suit. Perhaps we need more help from sociologists and people of that ilk to help us to understand how we can engage better, even better, with community groups and encourage them to support the sort of work we're doing. The second point is that it's clear that the research base for the establishment of successful conservation strategies is still slightly weak in many ways. One is struck by the lack of knowledge about the Aristolochia genus, considering how important it is to many of us. More needs to be done definitely there. And it's good to see that research is going on captive breeding as well. This will probably become even more important. And it was very interesting just to hear the way in which fragmented populations become weakened because of a lack of outbreeding. I'm sure that is a very common phenomenon, must be happening worldwide. And captive breeding to counter this and perhaps get a genetic basis, as somebody suggested, to introduce into that area of research could become extremely important. And the final one I want to mention is about protected areas, not just the establishment of protected areas that are congruent with the butterflies that we care so much about and that actively protect them for the future, but also protected areas that actually do parade information about butterflies and perhaps particularly swallowtails and birdwings. Very often still we go to national parks and you don't hear about these magnificent creatures. Kinabalu was a case in point, actually not just a national park, a World Heritage Site, where really the information given to the public on the Kinabalu birdwing was zero before Stephen and his team started their work. So there's just a few thoughts from me. I wish we could speak for longer, but regrettably, I think we will now draw our meeting to a close. And I want to thank all our speakers again and thank all of you for giving up your time and attending and your patience in helping us while we get this sort of technology working for us. I hope some of you may even be able to join our second session, which will start at 1700 UTC. That's Universal something or other. So 1700 UTC. If you look that up, you'll find out what time that is where you are. I hope you may be able to join us. Take care and thank you again. Bye-bye.